Good morning. Welcome to What's New in WPF 3.5 and beyond. I'm very excited to be here today at MIX. I'm happy you're all able to make it. My name is Rob Relier. I'm an architect on the WPF team. You can find my blog not at robrelier.com/blog, but I'll redirect you to wherever I'm currently blogging. Currently blogging up on windowsclient.net, which is the new community site for WPF and Windows Forms development. So check out windowsclient.net. Lots of great content up there. So I'd like to talk today about the rise of user experience. I'll go through a little bit of the history of WPF releases, and I'll also go through details about what we're doing in both .NET 3.5 with WPF 3.5, which is already shipped, of course. So some of you may already know some of that. But I'll focus more of my time actually what's coming up in an upcoming release. Now, in all my years of presenting about WPF, ever since PDC 2003, I've never presented before with a build that wasn't publicly available at the time. So these builds aren't available yet, but will be available soon. I've never also presented with more than one build. I currently have like 3 or 4 different builds here, 4 different OSs on 3 different machines. So everything should work fine. Given a few weeks, we would have had it all into one build, but we're not done yet. So we're showing you a lot of exciting things that we're working on for the upcoming release. Now, Scott Guthrie yesterday at the keynote here at MIX talked about a number of things, showed off some cool effects, some pixel shader effects in WPF. You also saw an LOB application, the Cirque du Soleil application built in WPF. And Scott talked a little bit about the 4 things that we're going to be focusing on in this upcoming release. I added a couple others, but he focused on setup, controls, performance, and graphics enhancements. I'm also going to go ahead and talk a little bit about interactive 2D and 3D and an area we call syndicated client experiences. Now, how many of you have already deployed applications with WPF? Okay, we've got about a quarter of the audience, maybe. How many of you have already started building with WPF? Okay, maybe half. And how many of you have used Silverlight but not WPF? 10%. Okay, so let's get started. So user experience is becoming more and more important, and more people realize the value of user experience. WPF is helping people build great applications. We hope that you're able to evolve your applications to have great user experiences, to take advantage of great design, to take advantage of user feedback, to take advantage of testing, and just evolve, iterate, have feedback on your application. Now WPF, and now actually Silverlight UI as well, has a great architecture to allow you to rapidly evolve your user experience. The ability to separate your UI from your code behind, from your business model, from your data objects, allows you to really rapidly evolve and your application. Now, WPF continually is adding more and more graphic goodness. So a few years ago, it was pretty exciting to have a vector-based engine and have infinite scalability and those kind of things. That's all very nice. But we're continuing to push the envelope in a lot of different directions to make sure that the graphics platform underneath WPF is able to really meet your needs. More than anything, WPF wants to make it possible, make it so you can be successful building great desktop applications. That means great integration with the desktop, great accessibility, great localization capabilities, great tooling, great ecosystem, great third-party support, and on and on. Now, the story that's becoming clear here at MIX is that compatibility with Silverlight is going to be a really great thing for WPF as well. So generally, if you have a Silverlight application or a Silverlight skill set, you'll be able to take that same application with very few changes, make it run under WPF as well. So they're subsets. Silverlight UI is a subset of the full .NET framework, including WPF bits. Taking the same tools, same designers, same code, same markup, should make it possible for you to leverage things, leverage your skill sets. And also, hopefully, we hope to help create a large base of users, designers, developers who are familiar with all those things. So you'll be able to draw on talent from that are already familiar with all those skill sets. Now, just one Microsoft group, which isn't yet public with their releasing based on WPF, is really excited about WPF because they're rapidly evolving their application in prototype time. And so that's the kind of thing we're getting real folks building important products and really excited with the capabilities WPF is giving them. I'm going to step through, before I get into a bunch of demos and feature discussions, I want to talk through a little bit of the release timeline of WPF. Now, of course, in 2006, .NET 3.0 shipped, WPF 3.0 shipped in November of 2006 when Vista released. At that time, we didn't have the best tooling out there. We had the VS 2005 extensions for .NET 3.0, and it was only a CTP. We didn't really have anything released. And after that, we had a good year last year. In 2007, we shipped an update to .NET Framework 3.0 called .NET Framework 3.5. It included WPF 3.5. You also sometimes hear that referred to as .NET Framework 3.0 SP1 because it's also a service pack. We updated the exact same bits that were shipped in 3.0 and added some new assemblies with some new functionality. Last year at MIX, we shipped Expression Blend 1.0. And it seems like the Blend team is getting a new release as far, every few weeks they've got a new point release coming, et cetera. They've got 2.0, I think it's in beta now, and 2.5, they just released a preview yesterday. So they're doing lots of great things. They are a WPF-based application, and they're able to go ahead and rapidly evolve and build great things. Visual Studio 2008 added a lot of great support for WPF. First, they've worked on a XAML language service, and the XAML language service allowed you to do XAML editing inside of a text editor. VS 2005 used to use the XML editor with an XSD, with an XML schema in order to provide IntelliSense. It was less than great. If you ever had any third-party controls in the middle of that stuff, it would break. So the XAML language service is a great addition, and fundamentally they've done the initial plumbing of XAML throughout Visual Studio. And there's a bunch of other things that they know they would have to do. They've got a great start on a designer inside of Visual Studio called the WPF Designer, but it's clearly still targeted not for not for every developer in the world. You've got to still kind of love XAML a little bit if you're using that designer. So they definitely have a bunch of things planned to continue to improve and iterate on the tool. So this summer, I'm happy to announce that we are releasing a servicing release to .NET 3.5, which will include some new functionality inside of WPF and some other things. I'm not going to go into the other things. So there's a lot of exciting things in that. So let's start by going into some of those improvements. So first of all, setup. How many of you are happy with the setup experience you have with the .NET Framework? Okay. Yeah, I saw 0 hands there. So we really needed to focus on the setup experience of .NET Framework. Let's go jump into that demo, and then I'll talk a little bit about it. So let's pretend I'm on a Windows XP machine here with no .NET Framework on it. And I'm browsing along, and I find a great application, and I would like to install it. And that application happens to be a .NET application. So perhaps we could make it so that you could click on a link here and have a small download. This is 207K here. I think it depends on how much artwork you decide to put in this thing. We'll click on Run. Normally this would be signed, so you wouldn't quite see the unknown publisher. But you click Run. And what we'll have come up is a branded installer. Now this application happens to be the MSDN Reader, an application to make it easy to read MSDN content. Nowhere here does it say, would you like to install the .NET Framework 3.0? And the website didn't say, oh, by the way, you need .NET 3.0. We want to build a setup experience where you can just go ahead and run a setup, have a successful install, and focus on the brand of your application and not on .NET Framework branding. So when I accept here, It'll flip through, it'll download. Now I happen to be downloading from the same machine on a web server here, so the 27 meg download was a little fast. But 27 megs, that's pretty good. .NET Framework has slowly grown fairly large. And some things aren't very important for client scenarios. Maybe ASP.NET, CSC.exe, VBC.exe. There's a bunch of things that maybe don't need to be installed for every user in the world there. So we're building a setup experience that's going to go ahead and be nice branding, focused on your application, installing a smaller part of the .NET Framework, and getting your application up and running right away. I'll flip back in a minute. This will take about 4 or 5 minutes, where I think today's .NET Framework takes somewhere like 15 or 20 or something like that. So let's talk about some of the details of what we're doing here. So first of all, going back to history of the framework versions here, .NET Framework 2.0 shipped with Windows Forms, ASP.NET, a lot of great base class libraries. .NET Framework 3.0 added WPF and a number of other great components. .NET 3.5 added new versions, added Link, an add-in framework, enhancements to other things. And at that time, you could consider, when you install 3.5, it's kind of like you're getting 3.0 SP1 of the .NET Framework and 2.0 SP1. So you're getting the latest good fixes in those areas. Now this new release, we're also going to have a number of WPF enhancements, and there might be a few other things up in that box up there. And the install I'm showing you is basically a .NET Framework client install. And we're choosing about 30 megabytes of the most important bits for client installs. So the 2.0 subset includes system and MS Core Lib and a few other things, but it doesn't include system.web and CSC. We include WPF, parts of WCF, parts of Link, and all the things that are necessary for a great client experience. So we're targeting around 30 megabytes for this redistributable. Now, you've noticed on .NET Framework installs, we've got no problem going ahead and growing the amount of code and the great amount of functionality. And this is really just a desire to slim it down, make it more successful, and make it more focused on the client. We want that brandable deployment experience. We want to make it really easy to deploy applications. So whether you choose MSI, .application, or XBAP applications, we want to be able to have this branded installer be able to chain install your application and then launch it as well. So we'll come back to that in 1 second. It's 84% complete over there. We'll come back to that in a moment. I'm going to jump over to talk about add-ins a little bit. This is a .NET 3.5 feature. .NET 3.5 had something called system.add-ins. And what add-ins allow you to do is it allows an application to have a plug-in model or an add-in model where different people, third parties, are able to go ahead and extend your application. And the way this works is the application doesn't know what add-ins are installed. There's discovery APIs to go find add-ins. Here we discover that we have a My add-in installed, Cool add-in installed, and an Awesome add-in installed. You can then go ahead and we'll just start with My add-in. We'll go load that add-in, and we'll load it and run it here. Now, add-ins allow you to isolate the add-ins, and those talk to the host application via a well-defined contract that you set up. And you can choose what that contract is and what capabilities you provide to add-ins. But this is a great way. You can also isolate those add-ins so they could run at a lower security level, perhaps, than your full trust app, and only access things through that contract. So we'll go ahead and load another one, the Cool add-in. And we'll also go load in the Awesome add-in here. Now, this Awesome add-in has a little chart. I can click on things, and yes, that's pretty awesome. So there we go. We've got those 3 different add-ins installed, running. Now, the way this works is this is actually running kind of in an HWind host inside of here. So we've got an isolation boundary here through app domains, and it's kind of like you're hosting an HWind to WPF. Now, this is the first UI technology that's been able to do this kind of integration of an add-in directly into the middle of their UI. I'll come back to that in one moment. Let me just switch over to the install experience. Now, I didn't touch any more keys over there at all, after it was done engineering things, which will be a little more efficient as the setup team does a better job, we got the application up and running, and we're happy now. So I was reading all about MSDN Reader as I installed it, and here we go. How many of you have seen the MSDN Reader application before? Okay, about a quarter of you. So the MSDN Reader, how many of you have seen the Times Reader application? Okay, almost half. So the MSDN Reader is a rich client application that allows you to read MSDN content. And I can do things like add things to my reading list up there. I can drill in an article. I'll go learn about Script Manager. I'll scale my font. I'll navigate through the article using down arrow keys. It's kind of a long article. When I zoom it in like this, I can go to the right and the left articles with my arrow key. So here now I can read the New York Times, the Seattle PI like this. I can also now read MSDN content with the MSDN Reader. Now this code is all available. I'll point to it a little bit later. So you can basically take a starter kit, take this sample code, and build applications like this yourself if you'd like as well. So anyway, that was the install experience. Much better user experience for install, happier and easier install, smaller install. So the add-in demo you saw there, we had this isolation model, the namespace is system.addin, and we host via add-in for HWinds. I'll talk about a few other features we did in 3.5 as well, and then jump back to demos for the new stuff. So of course, WPF has two different application models. It's got a model that's a full trust application that runs in a windowed application, and it also has XAML browser applications, or XBAPs. And XBAPs originally could only run in IE, either on XP, Windows Vista, or Server 2003. In 3.5, we added support for Firefox hosting as well. So Firefox on Windows could run XAML browser applications. And those applications run in lower trust and partial trust. We also did some work to make sure that cookies worked well, that full trust apps and XBAPs could get access to the cookie data, much like your web app could for the network requests. So you could share data and have web apps and full trust apps work well together. The WCF team did some enhancements in 3.5 to make it so that web services could be called with their code using in partial trust, running inside of XBAPs. So those are a number of things that shipped in 3.5, and those have been shipping since November. Now, Brad Abrams had a blog post recently, just on it looks like in January. I've got the URL here. He was saying that it looked like WPF was coming into the mainstream because there were so many third-party controls. And that post actually has links to all these different pictures and all these different vendors of third-party controls. There's a bunch of controls available, from data grids to graphing software to ribbon controls and other things like this. So there's a vibrant market out there for third-party controls, and there's a lot of people who are also posting their own third-party libraries up on Code Project and other places as well. So we're real excited about the momentum in the third-party control world. But at the same time, we also have problems with our own control set. We've got some problems in some of our controls that we need to fix, and I'll talk to you about what we're doing. And then also some people have wanted a few other controls from us. So I'll talk a little bit about those things as well. Oops, I didn't mean to click on a hyperlink. So I'm going to give you 3 demos of some things that are coming in this post-3.5 feature dealing with controls. First, I'll talk about some items control enhancements, and then I'll talk a little bit about a data grid. Now, items control is the base class for our list box control and a number of other list-like controls, list view, etc. And we had support in .NET 3 and WPF 3.0 for virtualization with a stack panel called virtualized stack panel. And we would basically, that would mean that if you had 100 items in your list box, we would only create those templates for those things that were visible, and that was great. But it fell down in some cases, and not all controls were templated. It also wasn't as efficient as it could be, because as I scrolled through my 100 records, or however many records, I don't even know how many I have here, it would go ahead and create new templates for all the ones that were created and throw out the old ones. So one feature we've been working on is something called recycling virtualization. So I'm going to have a race with the old code against the new code. where we use standard virtualization in a list box versus recycling virtualization. So we'll click this and we'll run. It's scrolling, no hands. Took 2.7 seconds to scroll through all those items, or most of those items. The recycling ones, 1.06 seconds. So we've done some great work there to make it possible to really increase the efficiency and the speed of scrolling that you're going to be able to get. So 2.7 again, 1.07. So let me quickly show you the code that you'll turn on for this. Now, we're very concerned, since we're releasing many of these things in service packs, we're very concerned about compatibility. So even though we could change the default to automatically do that, we don't want to because we might break applications. So you'll need to opt into these kind of things if you want them for the time being. Perhaps having something in your app-wide styles would be a good thing to do. So here we had our list box, our normal list box, and then our second list box just had a virtualizing stack panel. That virtualization mode equals recycling. And that's all you needed to do, and it would be much faster. So that's improving one great feature for items control. Now, our tree view also was without virtualization, and so now we've done the work to virtualize tree view. I don't know, do you think I should install updates in the middle of my presentation? Maybe not. So right now I'm virtualizing, and I'll click on plus, and I think I've got 1,000 records here. Let's just go look at the memory footprint of this application. So I'm at 24 meg right now. Now if I go turn virtualizing off and expand that, our old behavior, not so good, 57 meg. Right? Okay, so virtualizing is a good thing. We're enabling it for TreeView now. If you're working around this right now, there's B, Costa, and other folks have blogged some different workarounds for this, but we're trying to fix it in the platform for real for you. Now we also found that it'd be helpful to have things like deferred scrolling. So sometimes when you scroll, you're going to go ahead and churn through a lot of memory, and maybe your data set is really rich and you don't want to go do this. So some applications like Outlook do something called deferred scrolling. So we've added it so it's really easy to go to deferred scrolling, and it will just jump to wherever you'd like. So just little tweaks to items controls. Now these are all investments we're making to make sure that items control is a great foundation for third-party controls, your controls, and future controls from us as well. So here's Outlook. If I built Outlook, now we haven't done this yet, but so this is a hands-on lab that Ronnie Sauerman and I think Sasha Corti, who are Microsoft employees in Europe, they built this application and built a 90-page hands-on lab about how to build Outlook inside of Blend. So great example for you to walk through if you're interested in building Outlook or learning how to build Outlook. So here, anyway, this is just like normal Outlook, and we've turned that feature on, and that's real easy to go do. So let me show you the tree view virtualization and just show you the properties that we've done for that. So the tree view virtualization, we had two properties. Basically, you turn on virtualizing to true, and then deferred scrolling has a scroll viewer. Is deferred scrolling enabled? That was enabled to false. Now this application actually had pretty much no code. I was just using data binding on a toggle button and binding to those different things. So when I clicked on those toggle buttons, it unchecked it toggled that attached property. That's the first time I've actually, I don't know if anybody else has ever tried to use data binding with a path to an attached property. That's the syntax for it if you've ever wondered. Okay, so we've had a lot of people who've been interested in having us build a data grid. And I can't say that we're building one yet in this release, but we've been doing all the work to try to make sure that it can be built in the way we'd like to build it. And we're planning on basically going from prototype mode now into real building of this control. And hopefully later this year you'll see news about a data grid coming from us. But so this data grid is, just to give you a quick demo of this prototype, this data grid is built on top of all those features we just talked about, the items recycling and a number of other enhancements in our data stack as well. So Of course, you can do things like reordering columns, resizing rows, columns, turning off header columns, etc. You can take advantage of delay scrolling if you'd like to. You can delete the current row. You can do selection across a number of different things. And we can go delete current row. We can do sorting, all those different types of things. So we're really excited to be working towards delivering a data grid. There's a number of third-party data grids out there right now. They're more full-featured than our first Rev will be. Continue to use them if you're using them now. They're strong controls. They went through a lot of work that will hopefully be easier now built on top of some of these enhancements. So we're really excited to work on some data grid functionality coming not too far from now. Yes? The question was, are there plans on making our data grid hierarchical? I'm sorry, I don't know the answer, but I will follow up on my blog with an answer to that. The next question was, the Silverlight data grid, will it run here? Now, generally, we want to make it so the Silverlight controls are a compatible, the control model is a compatible subset. So without knowing the specific answer for data grid, I should say that, yes, the goal is all Silverlight controls should be able to go ahead and run on WPF. And if I'm wrong there, I'll correct myself on the blog as well. But that's the story for Silverlight controls. Yes? So yeah, the question was, is there a way to turn, let's say you want a tree view virtualization everywhere, is there a way to turn it on everywhere? Yes, you could go ahead and, I'll do something like that quickly right now. If I went into the tree view project, you can use styles, and I could go do app level styles, and I'll do that for those of you who haven't done that before. I'll go to the app, and inside of here, I'll go create a style with a target type of tree view. Is it capitalized? Yes, thank you. So now inside of the style, I would go say setter property equals long property name, whatever that was, and then I'd say value equals true, and that would set it for the entire project. Okay, one more quick data demo. Sometimes people want to go do things like string formatting for data bindings. And so one nice little property now we've done for binding allows you to bind a value and actually have a formatted string with this. And so this is binding a value coming from a slider and turning it into a currency amount. And we didn't need to write a converter. We were just able to use the string format property. And the value of the slider control is still whatever that double was. So we had a slider here with a initial value of 50, and we had a text block. The text block has a binding inside of the text. It's bound to element name equals slider, path of value, and it tells the string format that. So really nice way to keep things declarative for a number of scenarios. And this even works. This should work right here in the designer as well. I can do things like, let me get to split view. I can change the value here. Let me scale down. It changes everywhere there. So works really nicely, works declaratively. It's always nice to be declarative. So that's a new feature on binding. I'll pop back to slides and just talk about some of those things quickly. I'll also talk about some data enhancements inside of 3.5. So you saw the container recycling that we did. That's going to improve scrolling performance a lot. You saw the virtualization of tree view control, and really a bunch of fundamentals, including improvements and collection views and other things like that to improve, to enable easier and better creation of data grid controls and things like that. Now in 3.5, we also did a lot of great things for data. One, just things that we missed in 3.0, things like business object validation. There's something called iDataErrInfo that we implemented in 3.5 and 3.0 SP1, with just a validates on data errors property on binding. We're continuing to invest in debugging. Now, some of you may have seen tools like Snoop and Mole and things like that, and oftentimes those will help you debug. But we also did work in 3.5 to have better granularity of binding tracings, and you're able to have different trace levels. And we'll continue to invest to make sure that data binding is easier and easier to use and debug. Now there's a bunch of great new features in 3.5, link and xlink, and we wanted to make sure data binding worked well with those things. So we made sure there was great support for xlink binding, and we made improvements in how we bind to data collections that are IEnumerable, and so which is what link is based on. So it's still better to have lists, etc. But basically there we were doing taking advantage or making sure we were great for 3.5 features. We also went ahead and cleaned up features in 3.5 to make sure we did really good data binding into an XML DOM, and then also good data binding into dataset. In dataset, I think in ADO.NET we needed a bug fix over there because they did some weird things with their hash values or something like that. I forget exactly. But so there were some fixes on both sides. So we went ahead and made a number of improvements. So if you install 3.0 SP1/3.5, you'll get those improvements. So we're really happy with the investments that third parties are making in controls. We continue to make a better control infrastructure, to make great investments in data binding, and we're really happy with where those things are all going, and we're looking forward to bringing a data grid to market as well at some point in the future. I'm going to show you a demo about interactive 3D. One second here. I'm not used to, like I said earlier, I'm not used to the working with 3 different machines and having to reboot. In fact, I forgot to reboot over here, so I'm rebooting quickly. I'm going to show an interactive 2D on 3D. So first let me talk about it while we're rebooting. The interactive 2D on 3D. So of course in .NET 3.0 we provided great 2D support, and if you wanted to have 3D in .NET, in WPF, you had to use a viewport 3D control. So it's a UI element, and you drop that there. I talked to one gentleman here who was using 3D in WPF to visualize weather, traffic, pollution, a bunch of things. Sounded great, and it was using 3D visualization. Has anybody else been using 3D in WPF at all? Okay, it's about 10 hands or so, something like that. In 3.0, we provided a very easy way for you to get things to work with 3D and to visualize things in 3D. And then in 3.5, we wanted to make sure that you weren't stuck in this 3D world, but you were also able to go ahead and put controls or vector drawings or images into this 3D world and allow interaction with that. So you started off in a 2D world, you jumped into a viewport 3D, you're in a 3D world, then you need to jump back into a 2D world. And so I'll talk a little bit about that now as well. So, all right, so we're rebooted already. Things should be good. I'll show you an interactive 3D demo. Now, the PM who wrote this demo really likes command prompt apps, console apps. He says it's better for debugging, etc. Now, this machine is just booting up and also doesn't have an engine.net. It's a kind of a Franken build here, so it'll be a little slow to start up, perhaps. So here we go. I don't know has anybody seen the cloth demo in the SDK? So David Teitelbaum, who built that, also built this. And it's kind of fun. You get to kind of go. So first of all, you can just click on things. So we're doing hit testing in here. Now the other interesting thing is, this is a text box. Or maybe we should rename it to, I don't know, curtain box. And we can spec some features here. Maybe we'll say curtain box, jitteriness equals vary. So what we've got here is we've got a text box in this 3D world, and it's on a surface, and the surface is being moved, and, well, all this stuff will just move too. But we do the smart thing to make it so that when you click on it or interact with it, it still hit tests in the right place. Events still fire. And so you can really do some pretty innovative things, whether you want to just stop with the curtain box or you actually want to go do something a little more useful. And then you can sit here and definitely have fun clicking for hours. Now, that slowed down a little bit because I think I double-clicked and I selected some text. If I select some text, I can drag and drop it over here, let it go over there. You can have spell checking going on, all those things. So lots of fun things there. That's a .NET 3.5 feature, interactive 2D on 3D. Let's switch back over and talk about that just a little bit. So in .NET 3.0, of course, our main spine of the class hierarchy, we had dependency object, which is where we add the property system, where we have a pluggable property system that does change notifications, supports animations, data binding, all those types of things. So you have dependency properties that you can layer on top of the CLR property system, and you can set pretty much anything onto this dependency object. Then we have visual, UI element, and framework element, and then controls and shapes. I'll go off of that. UI element lives in presentation core and offers what we say is life. Layout, input, focus, and eventing. All those things are added at that level, at that class. And what we've done is we've added, in 3.0, we added visual 3D, where you're able to have 3D visuals. And then in 3.5, we added UI element 3D. Now, it doesn't have full life. It just has IF. No layout, no 3D layout yet, but we'll think about that. It's got input, focus, eventing, and so you can go build those interactive applications. And then we have another component called Viewport 2D Visual 3D. Say that 3 times. So the convention there, the naming convention for this class, which we debated, is basically similar to a lot of the other graphics types in WPF. Typically, you'll have you look at this thing and you know this is a visual 3D. And what we're saying, well, it's a viewport 2D, which is a visual 3D. So this is kind of the viewport to go back into 2D. So once you're in the 3D space, you drop this visual 3D in there, and this is the portal back into 2D space, and you'll be able to drop a 2D controls inside of there. So anyway, so that's UI element 3D, viewport 2D, visual 3D, and that's some great new support for interactive 3D in 3.5. Another great thing that the team's been working on is something called Syndicated Client Experiences, or SCE. I'm going to demo now a photo viewer application, which will be available in a few weeks in source code form from windowsclient.net. So this is similar to the MSDN reader, to the New York Times reader, Seattle PI. This is built on top of the same starter kit. The photo starter kit here, photo starter kit allows you, allows you to browse through different catalogs of pictures. And just like the Times reader and the PI reader downloads RSS content with articles and stores it locally on your machine and gives you a great experience on that, this photo viewer downloads, this happens to download, I think, from SmugBug and Flickr or something like that. So you're able to go subscribe to these different feeds of photos you'd like to get and then have a great viewing experience. Just like before, I'll right arrow to drill down through all these different things. I'll do an up arrow to return to the album. And I'll flip through these different pictures. If I wanted to, I could go rotate them. Lots of fun. Now, this is going to be posted in a few weeks. Unfortunately, they didn't let me have the latest and greatest version. It's getting better and better and better. So they wanted to save some of the pop for a couple weeks for now. So make sure you go take a look at the photo viewer app in a few weeks, and just see the example of how you'll be able to not just browse articles, but also browse content like pictures if you want. So if I wanted to go search for flower, I could find flowers and go browse through that collection as well. So the photo viewer app is a great set of sample code and a great example of some of the things you can do with syndicated client experiences. So we want to make it possible for you to build really great desktop application experiences, tie in to data from servers, get updated things. We've leveraged RSS for this with just some little extensions for synchronization. And then we believe that by building applications that have a custom focused experience to deal with pictures or articles or whatever, branded with the brand you'd like to, is a really key differentiator for these experiences. So this, I'll actually link to the starter kit right now. I'll jump to that on windowsclient.net/WPF/starter-kit, starter-kits/sce.aspx. And you can go download here, and you can download and run the MSDN reader, the PI reader, the Times reader. You can also grab the source code for MSDN reader and look up here in a few weeks, and you'll see the photo example here as well. We're going to go ahead and try to show more examples of this stuff in the future as well. So a lot of exciting things in the syndicated client experiences area. More things in .NET 3.5 in those areas, besides flow documents and imaging here, is we've done a number of things in our text editors and text rendering to make things better as well. IMEs are input method editors, and so we've improved that in 3.5. We also improved the text support for Indic languages. And in rich text box, we've done a couple important things. Just like in 3D, we can now have 2D interaction. In rich text box, you can also have a button and interact with it or other controls. It used to be that they just sat there and didn't fire any events. We also allow you to have custom text elements if you'd like. So if you wanted other things besides bold and italic and you wanted your own custom data inside of there, you could do that inside of a text box, and we wouldn't destroy your data. We used to kind of downgrade some of your custom bolds into one of our bolds. So lots of great things there in text. We've done a number of performance enhancements in 3.5. One of the, I like to think, we talked earlier about how the client install now for .NET Framework is going to be focused on client scenarios and therefore not install ASP.NET and not install compilers. Well, I kind of think that we had so many ASP.NET customers over the years from .NET that even our performance work was targeted towards server scenarios. In server scenarios, it wasn't really important to have really fast cold boot startup time, right? Because a server, the first web page, that might take a little while, but hey, then you're up and running for days and days and days. So it really only impacted the very first user. Unfortunately, client software, it impacts every launch of the app. So it's much more important. And so we've worked with the CLR team, and they've done a lot of great work to make it so that the first load of the CLR and your applications, you'll see improvements of about 15 to 40%. 40% for the larger applications. And that's a benefit that just any .NET application is going to see without having to change any of your code. So they're just smarter about how they're loading IL, executing IL, looking up metadata. I don't know all the details, but they're smarter, they're faster. I don't care how they did it. It's beautiful. Now we've done, in 3.5, we did many, many minor wins and several big ones as well. And that goes both so we've already talked about a number of things in the controls area where we're doing faster scrolling, better virtualization, et cetera. And you'll see a number of other examples there. But we continue to be majorly focused on improving performance for scenarios that matter to you. We dedicate 2 or 3 developers to performance throughout the entire product cycle and continue to invest heavily there. One lesson I want to make sure I convey here is that a lesson that John Gossman, an architect who used to be an architect in the Blend team and now is an architect in WPF and Silverlight, he talked about their Blend experience. Now, Blend was building Expression Blend all along while WPF was being built, and so they had to deal with lots of breaking changes and design problems, et cetera. But they also didn't focus very much on performance throughout all that time. And by the time they decided to start focusing on performance, they eventually added some perf goals and some tests. And as soon as they had those in there, they realized that they regressed their performance about every 2 days. They would break those tests. Because .NET's so productive, you can write so much code, you can do things, and you can create slow code because you're able to be pretty productive writing a solution pretty quickly. So it's really important to set your perf goals and to continually test to make sure you're meeting those things. Because basically they had been developing for 3 years, continually regressing their performance, but not really even knowing it. So make sure you're setting your perf goals and testing, profile your applications. They also, once they started profiling their application and working on cold start of their application, they noticed that the initial boot time of their initial screen had 8,300 visuals, 8,300 controls pretty much on the screen. And they were able to focus on that and get it down to about 1,300, I think, and really, by being smarter, build a better, more streamlined application. So don't wait to focus on performance. It's your job too. We'll focus on problems, any problems we have in the CLR or in WPF, but make sure you're paying attention to your own code as well. So in 3.5, in the shipping code, in 3.0 SP1, we also made a number of investments, a couple of them to highlight are smoother animations. If you look at .NET 3.0 and you have a slow animation going across the screen, you'll notice kind of occasional hiccups. We don't like that. That was a big mistake, and we fixed that in 3.0 SP1. So if you see anything like that still in 3.0 SP1 or 3.5, let us know if you see any visual glitches like that. We've also done a lot of great work to make sure that layered windows that had allow transparency to true, to perform much better on both XP and Vista. And there's some fixes that are available for both XP and Vista. And I'll point to that in my blog. So we're also doing a bunch of work to make sure that we continue to make graphical enhancements across the board. You saw one demo in the keynote yesterday, and let me go do that demo and then dive a little bit into the details of what was there. And this is the effects demo. Now we've had certain effects in the past. We've had bitmap effects. Now in .NET 3.0, the bitmap effects we shipped weren't hardware accelerated. So oftentimes we would say, yes, we shipped that feature, but please don't use it because it'll turn your whole page into fall back to software rendering. We now are correcting that problem. My mouse is not happy. So here we go. This is the demo you saw in the keynote. This is a lot of fun to click on this grid. It's actually kind of addictive. It's kind of like you're boxing with this stuff. So this is interactive 2D and 3D. And we'll drop an image in there. So there we go. We've got a Las Vegas sign. And I can still continue to have my punching practice. Now this actually looks better on Vista, this little jaggedness. This was a late switch to XP for this demo. But this will be anti-aliased, I believe, in Vista, so another reason to upgrade there. So here's a magnify. So you've got a magnify effect. And what we're doing here is we're basically running a pixel shader in the GPU. And we can build these different effects. That was the magnify effect. I can swirl. I can ripple. I can do color key alpha. This is one of my favorite. You can do this brick mason, which is kind of does this pixelated image. Let's take a look at the process. Now, Task Manager took a little while to run. Now, maybe brick mason's more expensive. Swirl, not so bad. I'm not sure why this is inverting colors, magnifying. I wasn't seeing this earlier. I'm not sure why I'm seeing it now. So we can also go turn on videos. And we've got the magnification. We've got invert colors. We can swirl. We can do the brick mason. We can ripple. We can color key alpha. And we can punch. So there we go. So a lot of exciting things. Now we can also still make this a text box as well and say this is a text box, although you can't tell whether I'm typing that or not. But so it's really we're really excited to one, clean up bitmap effects so that bitmap effects that you might have used before, like blur or drop shadow, are going to be hardware accelerated now if you use them in common scenarios, the old ones. And we'll have a new blur and drop shadow that will be hardware accelerated pretty much in all scenarios if you switch to that guy. Let's jump in and see a little bit of code. I'll just now, this code isn't the cleanest code in the world, so I'm not going to focus on the application part of this. But anyway, there you can see that here in VS, I can see the design of that application, and I'll show you a couple pixel shaders here. This one here is a monochrome one, and I'm not going to go through all the details here, but effectively, we go grab the color, which is kind of 4 floating point numbers. We take the R, the G, the B value and divide it by 3 and just come up with a grayscale value and set out the alpha to A as well. And filter color is another variable. But that's the kind of thing you can do. You're basically running this little program on the GPU. You have 64 instructions that you get to execute in a pixel shader, and you'll be able to do cool visual effects. So this is the monochrome one. BrickMason is a little more advanced. And BrickMason is going to go ahead and figure out how it's doing offsetting of these bricks and things like that. It'll also go ahead and figure out, well, it'll just go grab the center of the brick value and then turn that whole brick into that. So it'll just sit there and loop through there. And so that's just a quick example of some of the effects that you'll be able to do. Now, I saw somebody, Laurent, I don't know if you're here, I saw Laurent blog about a question after he saw the keynote about whether bitmap effects would be running inside of partial trust now. No, we still haven't done that work. There's a lot to it, and it won't necessarily happen overnight. But that's not coming right now. So another feature that we're working on is something called writable bitmap. How many of you have rendering that needs to, that you've rendered in the past, say with GDI or GDI Plus, and you've had need to render that inside of WPF? Got about 10 hands there. And how's that worked for you? Has it worked well for anybody? Okay, so nobody really said they were happy. So we've done work to make it so that we've had this writable bitmap, I think, since .NET 3.0. Unfortunately, whenever you would write to this bitmap, we generally go ahead and generate a whole new bitmap and render a whole new thing and do way too much invalidation. So I just want to show you a quick example of a writable bitmap. Sorry, wrong demo machine. So sometimes people have data, and they want to present data in a way that, they need 10,000 plotted points, or they have other crazy requirements like that, right? So maybe they want to do things like this, and they want to shift it around, and they want lots of different things. So what we're fundamentally doing is we're allowing you to have an image tag and to have a bitmap image that is a writable bitmap, and then write into memory there, and tell us what has changed. Give us dirty areas, and then we'll do efficient updates of this stuff. So the nice thing is you can go make it faster, make multiple channels, all those things. All this stuff. Ooh, that's the first time I saw that tear, actually. Is that just on my display? It works fine on here. It doesn't look fine on there. It wasn't tearing over there. So I'm not sure if this is just a video driver bug with the external display. But you can also go ahead, if you wanted to you could also implement a paint program or something like that with pixel level editing, all those types of things. If you wanted to do an effect where you manipulated a bitmap and did an embossed image or something like that, something that would be very expensive to do, you could walk through and manipulate it. And so that's a writable bitmap. I'll quickly show you some of the code here. We'll ship a sample like this in the not too distant future. So this writable bitmap, we've got an editable image. This editable image subclass is image. it creates something called a paint surface, which is a writable bitmap, and it sets the images source to that paint surface. And then it works on that paint surface and does a number of different things, including notifying dirty rec type things. So if you're interested in taking your GDI, GDI Plus, or other type of rendering that needs to render through a bitmap, or if you just want to go ahead and have 10,000 points, scatter plot, whatever, writable bitmap is getting to the point where it's going to be great for you there. The question was, are you going to be able... So, I don't know if you'll be able to do that without unsafe. I'll follow up on my blog. So you're trying to do it in partial trust, basically? Yeah. I know that you will be able to, in partial trust, you'll be able to do it. It's not quite as efficient, and I don't remember all the details, but definitely there is a partial trust solution for it. And I'll post details about the difference there. So the last bit of interesting things is you've seen great 3D support in WPF, but oftentimes people are trying to build a CAD program or trying to do things like that in 3D software. In WPF 3D is really about integration with 2D and data visualization, and not necessarily exposing all of DirectX's capabilities. So once again, we're taking interoperability as an important characteristic here and making it so that you'll be able to interoperate with DirectX inside of your WPF application. So it'd be real nice to be able to layer DirectX right in the middle of things, to have WPF content behind it, to have WPF content in front of it, to be able to hit test on stuff and display menus and things on top of things. So DirectX doesn't necessarily give you the best power, the best control library to use. Let's take a look at a DX demo here. So this is a Direct3D X file viewer application. I've got 4 images, and each one of those is calling down into a DirectX bit of code that's rendering. Now the gradients you see behind them are WPF rendered. I can go turn off the surface format to be faster, to not support transparency. Now most file viewers you have don't necessarily sit there and rotate all you want. You don't need to sit there and rotating to do rotating, and we probably should be putting this on another rendering thread for the DX rendering to be more efficient, to work better. I will open up another file here. I'll open up Airplane 2. I'll show you some of the options here you have. You have pretty much the options to go do anything DX can do. I'll go do solid frame here, solid fill mode there, solid fill mode here. Now this is a WPF control on top of this 3D rendering, and of course WPF content below with transparencies there as well. So for those people who are building game systems or other things like that still need some of the power of DirectX and backface calling and all those advanced things that WPF 3D doesn't necessarily do yet, DX interop is going to provide great solutions for you. Great question about XNA. I thought of that question ahead of time, but I haven't gotten the answer for that, so I'm asking that question. If it doesn't work today, you can imagine that it'd be a great idea for us to get it working. So I'll figure that out once I get the right answer from my team. Oh, pardon me about direct show? So the question was, could you use direct show through Direct3D here? The question was, were there plans for incorporation between WPF and direct show? Now, I believe direct show already, you can use direct show filters, and that'll work with our media pipeline. I'm not aware of any short-term plans to greatly change the way the direct show integration with WPF works, though. So we'll take a quick look at this code over here. So this CAD program, this CAD viewer here, basically had a direct 3D renderer. This was a C++ project, and that was talking DX. And then we were talking to that component from the WPF application. Inside of the window here, we basically have a custom control called D3D host that this application wrote. And this D3D host passed in a camera. That was just to make it easier, and they would take the camera there and work with DX to use that camera data. So this D3D host, I'll give you a quick peek at that. D3D host was just an image, and it has something called a D3D image, and it's basically going to go ahead and create a new one, create a new rendering host, create devices, etc., and then set the image as source to that My3D image. So that's the start of that D3D example. So to go through, just once again, the graphics enhancements we made, we're making bitmap effects hardware accelerated and having a whole new infrastructure to allow you to write custom pixel shaders in full trust. We did a lot of work to improve how text rendering works, especially if you use a visual brush, or if you're in 3D scenes. Our text rendering is much more efficient, at 10%, 15% better improvement performance, I believe, is what we were seeing. We improved writable bitmap to make it very strong and very performant, and we're working on DX interop to make sure that those people who have investments in DX can interoperate with WPF well. So the takeaways here are that we've enabled a great wave of user experiences with WPF. We're continuing to invest in WPF. We have this kind of, we shipped in 2006, we shipped in 2007, fixing problems, innovating as well. And here, once again, in this servicing release, we're going to go ahead and innovate in a number of areas, fix core customer issues, and we'd love to hear from you about what else you'd like to see, what else you'd like to see WPF from WPF in order to make you successful. The future is really bright for the .NET UI continuum, Silverlight and WPF, leveraging your skill sets in both places, targeting devices, the web, and the desktop. Our goal is to make it so we have that consistent programming model and allow you to leverage the best of all of those devices. Please keep the feedback coming. Make sure to catch other WPF-ish sessions, and there's probably a lot more than this as well. Later today, there's going to be a walkthrough, some of the support in Visual Studio 2008 for WPF, and then Friday there's a bunch of sessions that go into WPF topics and design topics. There's a number of hands-on labs, and if you've already missed some of the sessions on Wednesday, you can go back and watch those online as well. And then there's probably a number of other sessions that relate to WPF. I didn't filter them necessarily. So I'd like to thank you very much for your time this morning, and I'd be happy to take questions now. Yeah. Thank you. If you could step up to the microphone, if you don't mind.
Hi. Is there ever going to be support for 3D and Silverlight? And on that, is there ever going to be WPF 3D written on top of OpenGL, or at least the ability to extend it in a consistent way?
I guess you never say never. There's no announcements about Silverlight in 3D. As far as OpenGL, I'm not aware of any plans we have. I'd love to understand what kind of needs your product might have. I'm not aware of plans to do integration with OpenGL, though, but I'd love to chat with you about what your requirements are. Yes?
Hi, Rob. You blogged recently about a potential master page solution in WPF.
Sure.
Are there any plans to include kind of a best-of-breed master page solution in the control library? Because none of the solutions that are out there at the moment are particularly effective.
Yeah, okay, so there's a couple different people out there in the web who have talked about this is how to do master pages. We're definitely talking with, it's interesting, the Silverlight team as well. People who are coming from ASP.NET find it especially effective mechanism to have one page that defines a template for how things work, and then having different pluggable pieces. So,
Yeah.
so we're discussing how that could be done as well as possible, and prototyping things, thinking about it. There's no short-term plan on it, but it's clearly something that we're thinking about.
Sure. Okay.
So,
Thank you.
thank you.
I just want to know how Microsoft plans to help vendors address like inabilities in the graphics cards. For example, if the arrow theme is running on Windows Vista, and you have a text box that is sitting on a tab page. I'm talking in Windows forms here even. I mean old like Windows forms, and now in WPF. It's like an inability in the graphics card because of the arrow theme, because all the things we're trying to do here with Vista causes the text box just to disappear, okay? And you have to invalidate it when you enter the text box and invalidate it when you leave the text box so people can see the text in the text box. And with all this new stuff, like the tear you just saw, that was obviously an inability in the graphics card with something you were trying to perform.
Sure. So I'd love. Are those known issues already that Microsoft knows about? Well, so please take my card afterwards. I'd love to find out the details. I don't know the exact mechanism our graphics team uses. I believe that they communicate any known driver bugs to the driver vendors, and they test using a variety of cards. We oftentimes updating your drivers to the latest driver will fix some issues. But I'd be happy to help drive any issues that you are finding. Thank you.
With the shader demos that we looked at, is that exclusively pixel shaders, or are vertex shaders something that we can look at also?
I think if you look at the code there it mentions vertex shaders as well.
Right.
But I believe we don't have control over the vertex shaders. But I'll confirm that.
Okay, thanks.
Is there a reason you want? Tell me what you'd like to do with the vertex shaders. Okay. So just to repeat for people who can't hear, basically vertex shaders is the way you get data into the pixel shader. Now we do have ways to get data in and to interoperate. You can build dependency properties and pipe those into the pixel shaders. So we do have ways to get data in. So it'd be interesting once you see the full model to figure out if vertex shaders seem important to you for that need. Thank you.
Is there any plan to provide a WPF diag type app, like DX diag, where you can actually get the hardware and the other readouts? As well as with that, there's a lot of unseen and stealth registry settings inside of WPF for things like disabling hardware support, disabling and enabling and disabling anti-aliasing in 3D. Having some way to control those through the API per window would be huge. And hey, I got applause. In the field, we've had issues with tier 1 graphics cards. Just rendering 2D content, it scrambles it all up, and it's an Intel integrated video problem. But it'd be great to have some sort of diagnostic tool or some way to thunk that functionality down.
Okay. Well, I'll make sure to pass the feedback on to the team. I'm not aware of a WPF diag, and I'd love to have you follow up with an email to me about which ones of those settings would be most interesting for you to have and most important to have control of. You said on a per window basis or something like that. So I'd love to have follow up there. Thank you.
You spoke about prototyping data grid. And are there any other controls you're planning to release?
We're likely going to do a data grid and a ribbon in the first batch.
Okay. How about a date time picker? We are missing it so much.
Yeah. My impression is that we're not positive we'll be able to do that. We know it might be third on the list for the date time picker. The data grid may have one integrated into it, but whether or not we'll have time to build one standalone one or not, I don't know.
Is this data grid going to have some interesting features besides the basic ones, sorting, column resizing? Can you give us some more details?
I'll see what kind of details we can release. Are there any specific features you're most interested in?
Sorry?
Are there any specific features you're most interested in?
No, I was just wondering about the features you're planning to
Okay.
implement. Okay, thanks.
All right. Thank you.
Regarding XBAPs with the release of Silverlight 2 coming out, is there going to be sort of a best practices on when to use an XBAP versus a Silverlight application? I've been trying to figure out when XBAPs will actually be more useful than Silverlight 2 would be.
Right. Well, there's a number of, so yes, we will, as Silverlight 2 is released, it becomes more and more viable to, where you had to use an XBAP before, Silverlight's going to be a great solution for a number of scenarios now. So figuring out the set of solutions that are very important that only work in an XBAP. I mean, you'll have the full .NET framework, so there'll be some things that you can do there. There are a number of customers who, when I talk about, long term, would Silverlight be good enough for you? They still think that XBAPs are the way to go for their scenarios.
Even though you can plug in additional framework components if you need to in Silverlight 2? So if there is something in...
Yes, I mean, with XBAPs, for an intranet solution, you can run as full trust. You can sign the XBAP and you can do that. So there's a few things that you can do with XBAPs that you won't be able to do with Silverlight. We need to provide better guidance about what those things might be. And over time, I would imagine there'd be fewer reasons. But we think that partial trust is an important scenario for the full .NET framework. And whether that runs in the browser or otherwise, we'll continue to invest in partial trust solutions.
Thanks.
Great. Thank you.
I haven't been able to find this yet in WPF. Is there a way to write my graphics into a meta file?
You'd like to write your graphics into a meta file. So is that, for instance, you'd like to have drawings?
Drawings, and then be able to paste it on or put it on the clipboard.
I gotcha. No, there's no interop right now with clipboard with Office file formats and other things like meta file formats. Okay. It's definitely on our list, and we'd love to hear what's most important to you.
All right.
And what? Tell me the scenario that's most important to you.
Well, I do a lot of visualization in WinForms right now, and we put those onto meta files that get put onto the clipboard, and then paste them into Office.
Okay. And then in Office, you're able to have, it's basically scalable somewhat at that point. So
Absolutely.
You want scalability once you paste into Office.
That's right.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, definitely, it's on our list. Just don't
so there's
know
no way to get those nice vector graphics into another application?
Well, you could, you're saying?
From WPF.
Yeah.
If I have, for instance, 2D graphs, I want to move those into another application, just for sizing and so forth.
Right. I'm not aware of built-in ways to go do that today.
Okay. All right.
So.
Got to do that.
Yep.
Thanks.
Thank you.
You mentioned the service release, and there's an elephant in the room, so I just got to ask. The data guys are also talking about a servicing release to ship, for example, the enterprise framework. But you were very quiet about that. Is that just because that ain't your thing, or are we looking forward to multiple servicing releases this year?
We're not ready to talk about specific vehicles. Hopefully we'll do the right thing.
Please.
Your feedback's definitely heard. Thanks.
You mentioned...
and this is the last question before we're going to turn the mics off.
Sorry. Yeah, just a quick question about XBAPs. And did you imply that it can detect if you have or don't have the framework and it would prompt for an install?
Well, XBAPs can already do that.
Okay. I'm not
if
with
you
that.
have IE7 installed,
Right.
I believe that if you try to navigate to a .xaml file, an XBAP, an XPS document will prompt to install the framework.
Okay.
So you can already do that today. But the way you can detect to see whether or not the .NET framework is installed is in the user agent string. We send whether there's .NET 2, .NET 3, 3.5, et cetera. So it's really user agent detection and then prompting to have a branded setup.
And no way for Firefox yet to do that?
I don't know if we did any work to make those reg keys go up through Firefox. That's a great question.
Okay. Thank you.
Probably not, but I don't know. So, all right. Thanks very much. I'll stick around here for a little while.